In conversations around game preservation and the history of video games, there is often an urge to turn to quality and joy as reasons to connect with our pasts. While those are by no means bad things, I think it's worth remembering, even if you work in a space where the types of media you're working with are less popular and do need for the gems to be brought to people's attention in a way that lets them shine, we need to accept that there are important things worthy of preservation that also just suck ass. It is in that way I want to talk to you about Hugo's House of Horrors and its 2 sequels, because these adventure games were free, available for me to play, and also taught me terrible things about the way adventure games should work. One of the first things I want to hold up about the Hugo's games is completely positive. These games were shareware, where you got them, you could play the whole game, and then, if you liked it, you could send the developer £15. And the developer was one person. This whole thing was a single-person affair to start with, and that deserves some praise. What deserves some mockery is that in 2001, when the developer found people who liked the game making a remade version of it on the adventure game interface, he issued a cease and desist order. So I don't feel like talking about him in particular. I'd much rather talk about the games that they got made and how they are bad. If you're unfamiliar, these games are all parser adventure games, which is to say, instead of having a point-and-click interface or a set of fixed instructions, what you have is a text prompt that lets you enter commands and some movement keys that let you position your character in a space. This is a model that you'd know from the King's Quests, the early Leisure Suit Larrys, and the earlier Space Quest games. Pretty much everything Sierra was making before LucasArts sort of standardized the point-and-click interface were all parser games, and they were essentially just an evolution of the text adventure. Hugo's House of Horrors was the first one, and, I mean, it's a single person's work. It's one person working with non-specialized tools who doesn't necessarily have a lot of skill in graphic design, making a graphic adventure. It really shows. Hugo's House of Horrors has an entirely linear series of use key on door puzzles. You need to do everything in a set order in order to get to the next thing that will let you do the next thing. Because of this, any sense of a space you're in is very much diminished. It has your classic adventure games of the Sierra era problem where you can just die very easily. You can progress past certain points with the game in a state where you can't win anymore. And crucially, the greatest sin, I think, of the Hugo's House of Horrors first installment is that it has a trivia question as core to its game completion. If you're not aware, trivia is one of the worst things to build a game around. Trivia is self-selecting and functionally binary. See, here's the thing. With a trivia question, you either know the answer or you don't. And if you don't know the answer, that's it. The fail state is there. Which means, in the optimal version of this, with no or don't, you are presenting people with essentially a coin flip. And what's more, this is a parser game, so it's entirely possible you have a correct answer that you just aren't expressing with the way the parser wants you to understand it. So it's an unclear coin flip. Furthermore, what's trivia is very much isolated by your expertise and your experience. Leisure Suit Larry gated its dirty adult versions with trivia questions that assuming only adults would know the answer to, which is true. And I am an adult, and I couldn't tell you the answer to these things without looking them up. Similar, the Hugo's House of Horrors has a trivia question about a radio drama that became a black and white TV show. Trust me, you're not going to know the answer to the question if you haven't looked it up. Less than a year later, the developer puts out the game Hugo 2, Whodunit, which is based on a love of Agatha Christie stories that's, let's generously say, there. And it introduces a couple of new problems for the adventure game designer. Specifically, this one decides to extend its gameplay duration with the inclusion of a maze. Mazes are amazing for what they offer to gameplay of an out-of-genre type. You can make any kind of thing take longer by just putting it at the end of a very long, tedious tunnel. And making it so people can make a mistake progressing through that tunnel is even better. The nature of the visual adventure game as one where a player can orient themselves in a space and then deliberately using that orientation as part of the puzzle seems novel, and then you realize it's really annoying. This is a game where you get to play Penelope, the character rescued in the first story, and it's not good how it handles its woman character. She does get some very unfortunate advances thrown her way, and if you go to the end of the plot, and spoilers, which I'm not going to give you much of a warning for, because who cares, you find out that she has in fact called the police over dick nothing, because nothing happened, there was no murder. So the answer to whodunit is nobody, which is pretty much how I feel about playing the game itself. But what's more, this game has easily the worst puzzle I have ever seen in an adventure game. Not one of your Sierra-style obtuse ones, but this puzzle right here. See, in this puzzle, you want that banana. Why you want a banana? Hard to say. Maybe there's a thing somewhere else in the world that obviously wants a banana. But for now, you need to come up with a way to get that banana. Is there a plank somewhere you missed? Is there some kind of ladder? A rope? A lasso? A grabbo arm? No. No, what you need to do is walk down to the bottom of the screen and walk across. The path is there, it's just hidden from you. You can't see it when you look. There's no command for getting access to it. It's just there. This is incredible bullshit. This is a puzzle that is designed to get people into game studies so they can write essays about how dreadful this puzzle is. This game is trying to give itself the air of a mystery where you solve it by being smart, but it doesn't work because none of the parts are actually mysterious. You wind up needing the banana so you can give it to a genie. And you know, when you've got a genie and wish-granting fairies, you've probably got other problems than an ordinary murder mystery. It's also just really unfun to play, because in addition to the maze, there's also sequences where you have to very carefully navigate around specific obstacles. A sort of one-screen pixel-perfect movement puzzle, which is like a maze, but also sometimes the pieces are wiggling around. If you're going to play it with the point-and-click interface, because that lets you get around some of these things a little more easily, and it's a little more forgiving than if you use the keyboard parser, which is itself a whole extra problem of its own. 1 year later, we get Hugo in the jungle. Hugo goes to the jungle. Hugo's jungle adventure. Something. At this point, I don't care. And honest to goodness, this game is the best of the three, and also, you will probably solve it the first time you play it in about half an hour. The puzzles make some degree of sense. The flow and the narrative of how things work is roughly coherent. There are fewer things that will just randomly kill you if you take too long at them. And the appearance of the old man is a kind of a last-minute throw-in thing. It's not particularly dreadful. There's even a set-piece moment with an elephant sitting down. That's not so bad. But yeah, it's very hard to get past the way the members of the African village are shocked by the discovery of spices. That Hugo brings them stock cubes, and that this idea is revolutionary to them. Fundamentally, the Hugo's House of Horrors trilogy is free games from 1990 made by one person who exposes a lot of that one person's particular biases and occasionally ambitious failures. They are fine. They are not great and dreadful sins. They are not deeply misogynistic or hateful works. They aren't even remarkably bad if you're not the kind of person who gets worked up about bad puzzle design in games from the 90s. These games are, however, really good at showing you what one person did and tried, and all you have to do to work out how to do a better job is to look at this work that someone successfully put out and ask yourself, hey, was this a good experience? Did I like this? Was this good? And realize that you don't have to put a maze in your game just because Leisure Suit Larry 2 put a maze in their game. You don't have to include things that are familiar to you from this genre that suck shit. Bear these in mind whenever you make your own games.